you need anything else from the drugstore?
No.
Who's your guest today?
Zed.
Oh.
It's Zed.
Everything's been resolved for your mother at the new place, at the Berkeley, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Airbeth, can you go mute before we start?
Hi, we just need Mary Beth and we'll get started.
Sounds good.
We are live, so hello to everybody who's joined us. We're I'm live on LinkedIn. Substack and also YouTube right now. So make sure you ask a lot of questions. We have one of my favorite humans with us today, Zaid Marji, our CTO, who's going to talk to us about the reality of AI and how to stop chasing your pilots and actually getting your AI operating and into models that actually tie to some ROI. So I'm excited that you're here, Zaid, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about engineering, enterprise innovation, and stuff we've been doing together for a long time. So if you want to say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sandy, for the great introduction, as usual. It always feels good to be in a meeting and a conversation with Sandy because she makes me feel great about myself. My name is Zaid Marji. I am the CTO of Sapient Advisors, and I also I'm the founder of Loom Labs, which is a venture studio that focuses on building AI products and AI accelerated tooling and SaaS products. My background is a software engineer. I've always viewed myself as kind of a tech geek kind of guy. Worked for the past 20 years in the industry across multiple different verticals, from defense contracting to healthcare to startups in tech. But a good chunk of my career has been spent in financial services, working at Moody's. Spent a bunch of time with AWS as a solution architect in New York, and then last but not least, I worked as head of data and AI for a private equity firm and I led the teams there. Led teams as large as 150 people. As small as one, which was me, and then definitely excited to be here with Mary Beth and Sandy. Again, as people I've worked with at Moody's, and this talk is really interesting to me because we've done this. I've done this with Mary Beth and Sandy while we were at Moody's. Um, the concept of building product and the concept of building technology driven products and things that a company can use to increase revenue or cut cost is not a new concept. And the incubation of these things is not a new concept. Like I said, I've worked with these ladies here on a few projects back in Moody's, in the Moody's Accelerator. What changed is the speed, right? And now, whether you wanted to have an incubation or an incubator or building an innovative solutions for your business or not, you're kind of thrust into it now. Like you have to in order to survive this onslaught that AI is bringing. So what I'm hoping out of this conversation today is kind of cut through the hype. There is a fire hose of information coming down the pike for everybody, including myself. I'm overwhelmed and bewildered by the amount of data that I have to consume daily, and I can only imagine the people who are not as tech savvy, let's just say, how bewildering and potentially scary it sounds to them, right? So we intend to cut through the hype and just bring it down, bring it down to basics. One of my favorite of investors is Warren Buffett, and I love him because he just makes it sound simple, right? Just the basics. Like, let's take a look at the basics, and then everything will go from there. Don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but a great majority of what he does is solid and sound. So yeah, excited to be here with you guys and just kind of digging in.
I'll jump in for a minute. So to back it up, Mary Beth, Zaid, and I all worked together at Moody's. We were part of an accelerator team. I don't really know if both of you worked necessarily on a project together, but you are
No.
correct. I am everybody's hype man. You are two of the smartest people I've ever worked with, and I love that I get to work with both of you again for, I think, the third time now, Zaid. I think we want to, Mary Beth, have you jump in and kind of talk about AI as a tool and see how we can kind of work in some of the discussion about taking our pilots into real world.
Yeah, I think one of the things I just want to say before we continue on, we're super excited to have Zaid on with us today. I think one thing I just want to say to the audience is we are streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Substack. If you have any questions, we have Christine fielding questions on LinkedIn Live, and we have Richard fielding questions on Substack Live. So please submit your questions. We do not necessarily hold questions to the end. We will take them as they come. It makes it for a more dynamic conversation, and it also helps us answer what you want to hear about and talk about what you want to hear about. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So, just diving in with Zed, and I like how you just framed, and I think we are on the same page of we are building products, we are building, it's not new to want to generate revenues or cut costs or mitigate risk, but there are ways that we can now do it that's different before to help our P&L. But there are things to think about that people don't necessarily understand and like getting through that hype. So just kind of breaking it down to people, like the simplicity for them is where I think we should want to start here, Zed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, absolutely. Again, to your point, and what I said earlier, right? The fundamentals of business have not changed, right? We still, we start a business to make money, and to, run a successful a business and hire people and work with people to get them to also do the same, right? To generate money. It's a B2B kind of route and so on and so forth. So what that hasn't changed. What has changed is how we can do it, right? We could take a look at historical event. We try a lot of times. I hear people talk about, oh, this is like the Industrial Revolution, or the dot-com era.
By people, you
Uh,
mean me. I say that.
no, no. It's actually continuous thing that I hear, right, from everybody,
Yeah.
and throughout human history, that would be accurate, right? But if you look at it, this is the first time that something of this magnitude happens or occurs in an age of super fast information distribution, right?
Yeah.
So the adoption was extremely. The adoption was itself was viral, right? Because and the type of change that this is, because it was adopted faster as like it's going to look like an economies of scale, because it was adopted faster. The leaps and bounds that are happening with AI are also fast, right? Because now you're getting
Hmm.
more data, and it's just like the virtuous cycle. If I were to use a Jeff Bezos term, right? It's this kind of economies of scale, right? So it's transforming business. But I think the biggest, let's just say, pitfall that I hear, C-suites and people in leadership that they fall in, right? They're really good at their business, right? Most CTOs and C-suites and people running companies are really, really good at what they do. But they're looking at AI, or this AI revolution. AI has been around since the middle of last century, right?
Hmm.
But this type of AI that we have today, generative AI and all the tooling around it, um, they look at it as a tool, right? This is the new thing, right? This is cloud, or this is data warehouse, or this is, but it's not, right? It's fundamentally shifting the way we do and should do business, right? From the perspective of people, from the perspective
Mhm.
of process, from the perspective of P&L as a whole,
Yeah.
right? The
And
questions that we need to ask ourselves is, where does it change economics? How do we operationalize it? And how do we validate it fast, right? Like, again, this is not something that, some geek like me would go, tell you like, oh, we should use this. And you're like, oh, sure. No, no, it has to be in the center of everything you do going forward, because
yeah.
otherwise there's no way there's very little that you can do, even if you're the best person in the business that you're in. There's no way you can catch up to how fast people can operate. And I could tell you that from personal experience as a software engineer. The things that used to take me months now take me hours, and in some cases minutes. I'm shocked by, and it hits what we do as software engineers and software people very, very fast. But that, I think, translates to business as a whole.
Because we've done this in so many other jobs together. I mean, we've done it the old style. We've seen where something took 3 years to build out an app, right?
That's
And
right.
that was part of one of my reasons for wanting to move into the accelerator was there has to be a faster way. We started doing design sprints, and we thought we were like blazing fast at a 9 month, project that got live. Now we're to the point where we just did a project in like I think what 3 days.
Yep.
I mean, you and I haven't gone through this, and Mary Beth and I haven't gone through this, where it's like you can drop a file and make a make something immediately into a PowerPoint is so powerful. Mary Beth, I don't let you jump in.
I think that's all powerful, but I think Zed hit on something about it needs to be at the center of the organization and its process and the operating. And I think what I see, is a lot of people think they can skip some steps, right? So this is changing process, organization, people. So yes, you can do something quick with AI and it can accelerate you, but what is the right way to make, it's not just an IT project. It is more than that. So Zed, how do we get people to understand that and put in that work? They sit there and they go, oh no, I don't want to have to do all that, right? But if they don't go do that for their organization, they're going to have a mess. They're not going to catch up or keep up with others.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's a tough question, right? Like, we talked about it a minute ago when we said, well, how do you keep up with all the technological advancement? And it's really kind of a simple formula, right? Again, it's in the business. So you start off from the position of AI's here, AI's first, right? And that's not a geeky thing to say, or it's not like, okay, well, sure, tech guy, great, you want to do AI, so let's go do AI. No, that's not. This is different, as I mentioned earlier. So you start with that, and then you start thinking, it doesn't matter where you are in the curve, and you can have people, can have people in your organization, you can have people like Sapient Advisors, you can have people around you that can actually guide you into that journey. But at some point in time, once you understand overall what the capabilities of AI are, then you center with it. So now you say, okay, well, let's say I have this process, or I have this tool, or so on and so forth, right? So what do you do? What do you do with that? The question then becomes, is, now that I have it, how do I redesign? How do I redesign what I do, from operation, from process, from tooling, from so on and so forth, right? And you'll hear a lot in the news, the whole SaaS thing that just kind of happened a couple of weeks ago, the SaaS apocalypse, or whatever it was called, right? Is organizations are waking up to the idea that I can build this software that I was paying for out of pocket. Like, or I can build it. I can build it really, really quickly. And now it's not a SaaS solution where I have to wait for a feature that is going to come next year. I can just build it the way I want to
It's custom.
from the get go,
Yeah.
right? And so just going back to how do you operationalize that? You start with, okay, I have this technology, this thing that now I need to embed in my business and put in the center of my business. I need to then understand the capabilities at a high level, right? You don't have to be, a deep, AI person that understands transformers and vector math to understand how it works, right? All of these are fun topics to trace, but you don't need to be that depth, but you need to know, generally understand how it works and how your business can work with it. Once you do that, then you start looking at things that you already do: revenue, cost, risk, and experience, right? If you look at all of these components, right, how much is it going to cost me to run this versus the overhead that I usually do from infrastructure or SaaS or whatever, right? What's the risk, right? The compliance risk. How do I stopgap, right? And then you start basically doing what you did in the past with things like SaaS and infrastructure as code, infrastructure tools like hyperscalers like AWS and Azure. But now you know the capabilities, and then it becomes more like a software tool that you build. It's the economics around it and the risk around it, and what it can do, right? If you kind of factor it that way, then you can actually start making some headway around it, and it's not just pilots and a bunch of again, people like me who are like, oh, look at this thing, like this could do this, we could do this for the business, or we get excited. The technical guys, we get really excited about this stuff. But if you cap it in these categories, you really can move forward. I guess the message here is, if you cannot tie it to one of these four categories: revenue, cost, risk, and experience, it's just a science project.
So you're the product manager. You've got your roadmap. You already know you have to go build 100 things this year. And then the guy from IT shows up with the pilot. He says, "Hey, Zed, how do we do AI, as we say? What's your best path forward for getting those pilots integrated into our, the business?" I think that that's the big thing. It's not like this separate track. We've had this theme, Mary Beth and I have been talking about this for a while now. It's not outside in its own stream. It's literally central to your organization. So what are your thoughts on how to?
Yeah, that's a really good question, a good segue from a previous, right? If you look back at these categories we just talked about, you realize that you have basically a scoring mechanism, right? So you'll get
Mhm,
to, first it could be, qualitative potentially, right? And when you first start looking at it, right? Because I think in the beginning, as you kind of go on your cloud journey, muscle memory, on your AI journey, these are hard to tie to typical traditional IT spend, if you will, right? But once you've done it once or twice, you essentially can score, right, with these categories. Now, once you can score, the science projects show up really, really quickly, and
mhm,
they disappear really, really quickly. The beauty of it is, right, and we know this from the accelerator, right? Like, one of the big tenets of the Moody's accelerator was, build, iterate fast, fail fast, and pivot, right?
mhm.
Which is the startup, right? Which is the startup model. Like, how do we
Failing is
pivot?
learning. Yep.
Right? Now you are reaching light speed, or in some cases, singularity speed of iteration, design, and understanding, right? So first, some ideas are just going to fall flat on their face, right?
Mhm,
They don't score. They're not gonna, they don't move the P&L as a total, as a whole, right? And so you scratch those off. Some ideas might be interesting, but not now. So you're like, all right. And the beauty of that statement is, these are really interesting, but not now, is you probably have a working prototype, if not an MVP for them, that you can stash, and you can
yep.
stash it and move into that direction. And then as that score gets higher, then what you start to, start picking and choosing which ones to use. And then eventually you'll get to the top three or top five. With AI, for those who know me, they know my brain is like a beehive, right? And I try to do the, give me the 10 things I need to do today, pick the top three, and the rest disappear. This is the, you have to do that now with your entire staff, with your entire company, with the ideas that are coming through, and all these AI initiatives that are going through, right? So again, if you can't tie it to these four categories, and you can't score it, then it probably, or it scores low. I think you should skip it. And I think this is something that we're at Sapient are doing, right? We're giving you that. We can give you that framework, right, by working backwards from your process and product,
Mhm.
and leaning in and giving you these KPIs that you can, kind of execute on and leverage.
Yeah, I think we were able to go and talk to them about like how to, unlock what the use cases are, map it to those business objectives, the ownership, the metrics, and then they can actually, when they do the pilot, they can actually judge if it's successful or not. We actually have some questions, Ed, so I'm going to just go
Yeah,
for the
please.
first one. How do you identify and build into the build to scale the solution? What are the key levers to look to identify to be able to scale?
While you're building, I think this question is kind of related to while you build, if I'm not mistaken. There's a follow up on that. I'd be happy to take. As you're scaling quickly, you're building a lot of, you're pumping code, and you're pumping features, right? So I'm assuming the question is asking, like, how do you identify these features, and how do they scale? It's an interesting topic, right? Because that what separates sort of vibe coding from, like, standard coding, or just like the traditional engineering path, right? And it's funny because you've seen them diverge and then separate and then diverge again. But the reality of the matter is you apply sort of the same rigor. So for example, when I'm building a tool or something that I'm working on several projects right now where I apply some of the stuff that I tried, and the AI actually helps, right? For example, let's say you want to build an API. Let's say an API, right? I can mimic within in my machine. I can mimic 1,000 users on the fly, right? And 10,000 users, right? Potentially, right? Depends on which machine I'm working on. And so that concept of here's my products, right? And again, you apply what you already know. You apply your process that you've done in product building in the past. Like, okay, I'm releasing this product. Worst case scenario is going to be 100 users the first 3 months, 500 and 6, and then within 3 years, let's say we're going to go up to 10,000 users, right? And then you see if your code and your infrastructure can support it, right? And testing that with AI becomes a lot easier, but you have to be aware of these things because it's almost literal. AI is pretty literal in a lot of sense, right? So unless you say, as you're prompting, let's say you're vibe coding, and while you're prompting, you're going to prompt for these things and say, okay, so I built it, you run it, you're like, oh, this looks amazing, right? It would have taken me 6 years to build this, right? Then you go, okay, let's stress test it. And there's tools also within the product. So if the Claude Code users would know, there's a slash security review, I think is the command that gives you a full security review. So again, you still have to apply your knowledge and how you've done this in the past, but at the same time, you also have to prompt the systems to
I
actually
think I
do it
want
for
to
you.
double click there though. There is a difference between having it as a pilot and to scale, right? And
That's
make
right.
sure it's production ready, and that's the technology. But this is really a cross-functional effort in the organization. And it's not just, it's the business technology,
That's right.
but we also need to make sure we bring in risk compliance and governance, right?
100%.
That's the level, to me, that is the true lever to scale. You can't scale
100%.
unless they're brought in. And I think
100%.
we've learned that in our journeys, especially working in a regulated market. But to me, that's one of those to get the stakeholders. We have a second question, and I'm going to have Mary Beth Quinn resubmit that. But now I have a third question. Let me go into the third one. I can't read the whole second one. What does integrated actually mean in practice? Where should AI live in the workflow? Good question.
Oh man, I have to. I'm yeah, I'm fighting the urge to say everywhere, but I'm not gonna find that urge. Actually, I think AI should exist everywhere, but you should think about tooling it correctly, right? It's AI is not one thing, right? It's a collective, yes, in a sense, but at the same time, if it goes down to the level of prompt, right? Like how you're prompting the string. Like I prompt differently than Mary Beth and Sandy and so on and so forth, right? And each the prompt represents a set of instructions that you want the AI to do for you, right? And so where should it live? I think it should live everywhere. Just going back to your previous statement, Mary Beth, where you said, okay, well, you have compliance and product and security, right? If think about an organization where every one of these groups is powered with their own AI, right? Because you come in, you can detect things a lot faster, you can process a lot faster, you can fix a lot faster, right? And so in anywhere in the pipeline integration, right? I'll give you an example. For our last coffee chat last Friday, I think we talked about we built our Sapient bot, which is an open claw bot, right, for Sapient advisors. Connecting to email, right? Just starts with that. Like, so I connected that to my email. Now, I really didn't know how to connect my email to OpenClaw, right? So I asked it. I asked OpenClaw. I was like, "Hey, what do I have available?" Right now, I had another screen with I think it was Claude or ChatGPT in the back, just kind of guiding me through it too, because I don't want to fully trust one thing or the other. But that's just me being a little extra careful. But that's the thing. It's like ask it. Ask the.
Yep.
I'll give you a funny example. I bought a Nvidia. Nvidia released these kind of like development toolkits last year for Christmas, and I got it and put a post on it on LinkedIn, right? In my LinkedIn post, I said, "What should I do with this? The possibilities and interest." And one of my friends, Jacob, said, power it up and ask it, right? And I think that's the mind shift that we have to do as people, in companies large and small, and even on an individual level, is how can I process AI by asking AI? That I
Yeah,
think.
I guess, but I
Yes.
guess part of the thing is I think people also are trying to decide where does it make sense in my business, right? Like where do they have, we can apply AI everywhere, but what steps make sense? There are some things that are more critical, some things that
That's right.
AI might not apply, right?
Yep.
So, we can't be a solution in search of the problem, right? We need to look at that workflow and how to revamp that, reimagine it, but we need to be like, okay, where do we apply it and thoughtfully do it, especially with critical business processes and in regulated markets. And
Yep.
so that I find is really where the hard work is done with AI. A lot of people, I tell people, you say it too, is AI accelerates what you can do, but you still have to make do that hard work and
Speed
roll up your
kills.
sleeves. And I
Speed can
don't want
kill, right?
people thinking that they don't need to do that because that's a
Yes, I agree.
misnomer.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
Agreed.
that. We talked about this at AI Salon of like really bullying AI into doing the work for you, right? Like being a little bit more forceful. I think we're used to sending emails to our friends asking for help, that type of thing. Like you don't have to be nice. Like you can just
Yeah.
say, no, you do it. It's
I,
kind of
I
fun.
agree. I'll just kind of cap this concept with one last kind of thought. Right. Earlier we said AI is not a tool, right? And I think that question it kind of comes with like, well, where can I use this tool? AI is an assumption. It is here. It is something that you need to adapt to almost every platform. Now, you not blindly, like, oh, I just throw
Mhm.
AI everywhere. Like that's a could be a recipe for disaster, and we've seen this in Sapien, right?
Oh,
Or like, oh,
there's
I
already
have
too much.
Copilot, right? But I think if you assume it to be everywhere, right? Then again, and going back in your P&L, like, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but these four categories we've talked about, right? Then you will know where to apply it, right? There's going to be a list of like high priority things to low priority things, right? And in some organization, it's going to look like the very mundane things that nobody wants to do, right? And in some organization, it's going to be the bread and butter. Like imagine like a hedge fund, right? For example, they're just building to accelerate models to find alpha for a specific market sector, right? So it's different for every company, but that again, tying it back to the P&L and back to these four categories is probably what's going to really give you a clear map of implementation and
I
deployment.
think also though, when you talk about the categories though, I think one thing that would be interesting is as you scale it, how does the economics of this work, right? Because a lot of people
Mm,
are used to the SaaS model.
that's right.
And so maybe go into that a little bit. I think that would be
Yeah.
something to touch
That's a
on.
really no. That's a wonderful question. I think there you'll see a lot about this, and some people may or may not believe it, but we are still in the infancy stage of AI. It's scary to think that we're in the infancy stage of AI, but it's true, right? I don't
It's
think I don't
yeah.
think it has that capacity, right? The reality of the matter is that. Um, the cost analysis on this is there's companies that are doing it and doing really good at it, but nobody has kind of cracked it very, very well. And if you look back on cloud economics, that kind of changed the game significantly, right? From
Mhm.
like infrastructure as code to software as a service to all these platform as a service. Um, there were literally 1,000 companies. I could probably rattle off 10 off the top of my head that were created to manage that cost analysis specifically for
Mhm.
the cloud, right? I foresee a lot of this call it cost management, but just kind of taking a step back here for a second. I think it's good to understand how tokenization and tokens work, right? Monitoring these tokens with the different tools that we have. Um, and I think there's a lot of unique tools out there that help you. Like for example, one of our partners, NeuralSeek, does a really good job of kind of managing where everything lives and which model to use, and you kind of have an easy path to like figuring out which tokens. So that's one path. The other path is, and that's kind of it's not as popular, but also running your own models, right? Your own open source models and small language models, and that's something that I'm a big fan of, and spend a lot of time researching and building on top of. Is these small language models that basically are in a sense, just for those may not be as aware with it, they're basically the same concept. It's the same technology, underlying technology as ChatGPT and Claude and all the known names, but they may not have the same amount of training, right? So, like, for example, I think DeepSeek or Kimi, one of the big names right now, has a trillion parameters, right? 1 trillion parameters trained, right? But you don't need that, and because the trillion parameters knows about nuclear science, and it knows about coding, and it knows about recipes that grandma cooked, right? Like, you don't need all of that, right? So small language models could be a path in the future I foresee for a lot of companies to build. And overall, I think there's going to be a blend between traditional compute, your CPU, your RAM, and the traditional stuff that we all know and love, plus tied to token compute, right? Because you're not, for models you run internally, you're not going to think of in terms of token. You're not paying per token. And there's going to be a nice blended approach. I think as CFOs and CEOs start looking at this, and CTOs start looking at this, I think that blended approach will be something that they look at as AI cost overall, right? And there's infrastructure costs and so on and so forth. I won't get into that because that's typically either handled by the hyperscaler AI or handled by a hyperscaler like a cloud provider or internal cloud
I think
build.
that's really good to hit on, because I think a lot of people, they're used to the SaaS model, like, oh, we've dealt with clients, oh, it's a per seat cost, right? And you
Right.
need to explain to them and educate them that piece. And, if that's the case, they need to understand that this will cost more. And then we're going to have to make decisions about which model to use, what it is used for, whether you use a cheaper model or more expensive. And then I think you brought up a great point about the small language models as well. That can be cost effective, but it also, security wise, with the small language models, which you've educated me on, as well as be able to use them on edge devices.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You no longer need a large GPU or GPU cluster to run something like a DeepSeek or a Mistral or whatever the case may be. Mistral has a small language model itself, but you can run on a CPU, right? That in itself, and you see a lot of companies, like for example, Microsoft released something called BitNet, which is something you can literally run on a CPU, right? So now we're getting from the large language to the small language, and there's things called tiny language models, right? It's all about the size of training, but also where you run them. And what they're going to do, right? I think we'll see a plethora of these different things. But again, and from the cost perspective, I think overall that they will emerge a blended rate, and this is something that we can also help you kind of design and understand as we get into engagements with our customers. This is something that we help them do.
It's interesting too, because I think we've been so focused on the business aspect of this, but I do feel like that small language model is where we start getting into, like, and just based on me talking to my very technical and savvy friends, is that could be your own, for your house. You could have your own small language model
100%.
and run your house
100%.
off of it, that type of thing. So that's
100%.
my little niche I like to go down and talk to my technical friends about.
Absolutely.
Same here.
Absolutely.
Same here. So let's see. I'm just kind of skipping questions here. Let's see. We have more questions. Lots of questions.
I have questions. I could pop in. I'm always okay with automation.
We have a question though from the
going?
audience.
If you have a question from the audience, go for it.
Yeah.
I can also ask you. I kind of feel like as we're getting more and more automated, where are the jobs going? Where
Yeah, I
you know,
would
we
get,
have my kids are college age. Where are they going to work in 10 years? What are we
so
doing, Zed?
we I mean, again, I'm gonna refer back to the typical industrial revolution and .com, right? The moment our collective mentality shifts into AI is here, right? Like, you don't think about print today. Like, let's just talk about something as simple as print, right? When the printing press was created, right? It
Hmm.
shifted in time, like the humanity as a whole shifted in a very positive way, right?
Except for
um
the pigeons. We didn't need the pigeons anymore. We just
we
set
didn't
them
need the
free,
pigeons,
apparently.
right? I think so there's something, actually, this brings in a good point. The org structure has now changed, right? And we talk about juniors a lot, like, oh, the junior roles are gone and so on and so forth. But in reality, AI actually touches on a lot, and it's soon you're going to start going up the chain, right? How do you, as a CEO, go in and tell your company, hey, I just want everybody to use AI, and you don't use AI, or you haven't automated anything, right? That's actually goes double for CTO and CIOs, right?
Yeah.
That are out there, like, there's groups where, like, there's a chief IT strategist and so on and so forth under the CTO, and these roles were absolutely needed. But, like, as a CTO, you should effectively build your own automations and speed up your workflow, and then that way you could show your CEO and the rest of the company that this can be done. And the beauty of that is what else can you do if I'm not sitting there? Like, I'll tell you, like, from my personal experience, if I'm not sitting there obsessing about the code quality and how operational it is and how secure it is, and the does it look good for another human to read, I really don't care. I mean, I do
Yeah.
care, but I don't really care anymore, right? So what else can I do? How much more can I contribute to the business? How much more can I contribute to the tech itself? Well, oh, okay, now I can write the web page and it looks great, fantastic, awesome, right? That used to take me 6 months. Now it takes me 5 minutes. Well, what else can I do? What else
Yeah.
features can I build? What in the back end tech can I do? Can I build the calculation engine that builds, how many hours does it take, or how many, the cost that we just talked about with AI, right?
Yeah.
So it just opens up doors, and I think people have just focused on what I do today, and it's going to be replaced. But I would say every single person of us um, has something they don't like to do. I don't like doing timesheets, man. I'm the ed, right? So,
Nobody
like,
does.
things like that, but they're necessary. Like, they're absolutely necessary for the business. So how do you automate these things, and what that free time that you have now, what can you do with it? And that's the
Right.
question that we all have to ask ourselves. Like, it's not top down. It is starts with us. Like, okay, now that I freed up my time, what else can I learn more about AI? Can I dig? I'll give you a last personal example. I love deep tech. I love, blockchain. I love fully homomorphic encryption and so on and so forth, right? I have more time to dig into that. And that's not AI. I can't do it because there's not enough science behind it yet, right? And so that's what I do. And I think that's what people should start thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have another question from the audience. I just want to kind of get back to that. Just want to make sure we answer what the audience wants to hear about.
I know. Zed and
If
I can
a
talk about this
client
tomorrow.
would, I love it too, but I want to make sure we get this question answered. We're running out of time. If a client would deem that AI business solution did not meet their expectations, in
Mhm.
your experience, what are valid reasons if you've done all of the process, data, and governance work?
So I guess I want to make sure I understand the question. Or I think the question is asking is, how do you set the expectation with the client, even if all the groundwork was done? How do you communicate to the client, and how does the client understand what is being provided? I think that's touches on a point that we all are aware of, right? This is the typical, like, hey, that's not what I asked for, like that diagram of, like, what the customer wanted, what the engineering team, what the product person said, right? It goes back to that again, going back to basics. I think setting expectations of what it is, because this is such a big thing, right? AI as a whole, generative AI is it's a big word, it's a big thing to cover. I think going again, I hate to sound like a broken record, right? You go back to the basics, you go back to the P&L, right? And so if you start with that, you can end with that, in the sense that you can go back to the customer and you can point, when we designed this increased revenue, this is supposed to increase revenue, right? So did it increase revenue, right? And the answer back to the question is, if it doesn't address that metric, then the customer has an absolute, legitimate beef, let's say, right? And going back to you, and if it does answer it, then you have a retort to the customer. So it's just it's again, it's the basics and these four categories and that scorecard.
Mhm.
I agree with that. I think it also gets down to the way, if also making sure that they're all engaged in the process to
That's right.
build a solution, right? The end users and everything in the room doing a design sprint, whether it's
That's right.
Sandy, everyone, because that I think leads to the adoption. Because I feel that sometimes the client doesn't deem it met their expectations is because that part doesn't happen there.
The
I'm
other
not
the
saying
other
we would
part,
not do, but I'm just saying I think
yeah, yeah.
that's
No, I think you also hit on a really interesting point, because I think what you see now is because you can do so much with it, right? What you start off with may look very unimpressive by the time you're done, right? But it's still work that has to be done, and the process has to be on it, right? And so I think you build foundational. You foundationally build your AI from the data and the data cleanup and LLM ready data and so on and so forth. All these components that you have to build, right? Those actually take time, because AI can't fix your data for you. It can fix aspects of your data, but it doesn't fix the story of your data. That's a really clear distinction. I think people needs to understand is I can throw data at AI, assume it's safe, right? Like it's not, you're giving data to Sam Altman, but assuming that, even right, you're taking a look and saying, okay, I can clean it up, I can dedupe, I can build models with it, but it doesn't tell the story. You tell the story, the business tells the story of what this data can do, and that still takes time. One of my favorite memes is about data. Company says, "Oh, we have a data warehouse and we have machine learning." This is pre-generative AI, and then like the data team is like a little piece of wood propping up an entire building, right? Our view on data, I've been in plenty of data projects. Our view on data hasn't changed. It's like, give me the report, so on and so forth, right? But the real fundamental work, almost academic work that has to be done on data, usually goes by the wayside.
Yep.
So the best way to get there is to take, and that still takes time. Once you build that foundation, all these ideas, you cannot like, you can go back to the client and be like, you are free to do whatever you wish
Yeah.
right now, right? You can build on top of it. You can use these data sources. You can build these MCP servers, scales, etc., to accelerate your business however you see fit. But I think that base is still necessary, tied to the categories we've talked about.
Yeah, I think all those people who ignored the boring data projects for the last 10
That's
years
right.
are really struggling
It's
when
catching
they're
up.
thinking about their AI.
yes, they cannot kick the can anymore. Data
Yeah,
is a
No,
those
strategic
guys should
asset.
call us. Mary Beth needs to talk to them immediately. So
100%,
Yes, we
100%.
do. Yes, we need to set them straight. So, like, all right. So we have like covered a ton of ground here.
do we have any
So,
more customer questions or questions from
oh,
the chat?
we have one more. Oh boy. If the P&L conflicts with the AI investment needed for the solution, what options or levers would really be used to bring AI into your work process? Leaner solution, force a higher investment, alternative solutions. Um,
I guess I guess the answer is yes, right?
Keep going until one of those works. Right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the easy way. That's the cop out way to answer that question. I think the real question is, right, why did the AI not or conflict with the P&L, right? Is it the cost of AI, right? Is it that we have I'll give an example, right? I'm just thinking of an example kind of on the fly here, right? Let's say I can't have budget for the AI because I have my FTE's engineering team covered for the rest of the year. We need to deliver this to a customer, you need to set the features to a customer and so on and so forth, right? So in that case, again, it's shifting. You assume AI first. You look at these four categories and kind of like the P&L approach that we've talked about. And then you say, well, can I accelerate my engineers build of the features, where maybe a feature that was supposed to take 6 months now takes 3 months or 4 months, and I could take some of these engineers to do implementation, open source implementation with AI, right? Bring in open source models internally and build them, right? Kind of setting the stage for the next piece, right? I think the question here, and again, hopefully it's not a cop out answer, but I genuinely believe is that question stems from, this is technology that I'm going to implement, similar to cloud, similar to the newfangled tech things that came out in the past 20 years, versus saying this is table stakes. AI is table stakes right now. And so how can
absolutely.
It's table stakes, but I do think, and I'm going to kind of quibble with you, as someone we know in our past life would say, yes, I need the feature, but there could be a way to implement it in a way that's a little bit more cost effective. For example,
100%.
right? Instead of, let's say, generating, let's say, tear sheets on all these companies, let's say your company tear sheet, you could have a button, and then that button will generate the report upon demand, rather than having run all that, the model and all that cost, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's what I'm just wondering. There's probably ways to tweak it, right?
Absolutely.
The UX,
Absolutely.
the experience, or ways, and still get to that solution, but make it more cost effective.
Yeah.
And I think to that point too. Again, assume AI always. That's the mantra. Assume AI, right? There's a joke that I think you can change the profession in it. But they say you're stuck in an island somewhere, and then you have a can and you have a hole. I'm forgetting the joke, but effectively
I'm still laughing.
the intellectual answer is like assume can opener, right? You have a can, you can't get to it, you're in a hole, but you need a ladder. An engineer would be like, well, I will fashion some sticks and build a ladder, right? But like maybe a quant would be like assume can opener, right? So assume AI,
The program
right? Assume
manager would
AI.
say, I told you 3 weeks ago there was a hole and not to fall in it.
That's right. That's right. So assume can opener, assume AI, right? What AI already exists? Because again, it's everywhere. It's on your phone, it's on your laptop. Like where does it exist, and how can you leverage what you have already in order to accelerate? Like the developers, like a lot of developers have, like for example, Copilot licenses for their coding that are part of their your O365 agreement, right, with Microsoft. So it does. I guess the answer, another way to look at it is, AI doesn't necessarily have to come at a cost, because there's a significant amount of it that is open source and readily available to people to kind of bring it in as part of your assume AI, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Although us coming from corporate America, where you don't always have that opportunity to bring in some random tool,
Sure, absolutely.
everything's locked down.
Absolutely.
I agree with Mary Beth actually on really honing in on your scope, right? Maybe if this is your roadmap for the year, you're taking 10 points, assuming you're doing agile, skim 10 points off of every single one of your projects and put it towards AI, or you're going to be out of business. And make sure it's something, if you're building outside of your company for your clients, and if it's inside, that it's making all those people building for your clients faster, more efficient, and knowledgeable about AI.
Yeah, and if you have, and going into what Sandy's saying, is if you have AI features, which I mean, I've worked for, advised in a couple of startups recently and worked with them, is some of these AI features are expensive for them to support. So you might need to do a trick like the button, right? So that we can keep the costs in. So I think there's AI, we assume it, but then there may be ways to implement it that might be a little bit,
Exactly.
you get to the same result, but more cost efficient. And it also depends how critical it is, what you're going to spend on it.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely. But and then at the end of the day, look, barring security concerns and so on and so forth, if your team is trained well and knows what to put in there and not to put there, ChatGPT is free. I mean, it's free. Claude is free, right? So the tools are there and available. There's some security concerns and things like that that absolutely need to be addressed. But with the right training, if you can't get to it now, yeah, I guess you can get to it later, but that's a very dangerous thought pattern to get into right now in this day and age. Maybe it would have worked a couple of years ago, but it does not work in 2026.
Yeah.
All right, we're at the kind of top of the hour here. We got about 10 minutes. So lightning round, Mary Beth?
Sure. All right, Zed. Okay. What is your number one, recommendation in terms of an AI resource? It could be a newsletter, it could be a podcast, it could be someone you follow. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of my information actually, surprisingly, on Instagram. Instagrammers. My feed is just AI constantly, right? From a pure technical perspective and so on and so forth. From a business, from the business side, LinkedIn and Substack has been interestingly kind of things that kind of propping up from business leaders to kind of figure out how they're implementing and so on and so forth. But I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm the ultimate AI evangelist. I use Claude. I use ChatGPT. Like, hey, here's an idea. What do you do in this? Right? Do a search on this for me. Right? It just goes out. It does. It then aggregates all these resources and it give me. Then do your due diligence. Validate that these things are not hallucinations and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you can you use AI to get better at AI. I think that's a post I made on LinkedIn a couple of days ago.
Can we actually insert a viewer question inside our lightning round here, folks?
Let's do it.
We have a viewer question.
We can do whatever we want.
Yes,
That's right.
we can. Can we manufacture easy with the help of AI? Ooh.
Can you manufacture easy, like easier manufacture? So manufacture is a loaded term, right? It could mean applications, it could mean models, it could mean actual physical things.
Cars, like what are we talking about? Manufacturing?
Could be an assembly line, revamping it using AI tools.
Yes. So you'll see. Yeah. So the answer is yes, right? The answer is absolutely yes. AI has been in kind of, I'm going to assume it's the manufacturing of like actual physical goods and physical goods. I would say yes. There's actually a whole new slew. I mean, you see the robotics section is blowing up, right? And you see a significant amount of investment going into AI. AI, basically generative AI technology being fed to manufacturing. Like I just literally was reading an article on that. So it can speed it up. I think what's the difference between now and before is the capability for robots to communicate a lot easier and the context of what I think the focal point of generative AI is the context. So I think having an understandable context, I think these robots, let's just say robotic arms or humanoid robots, have a better context than what they did before. In the past, it was more kind of glorified rule based, but now I think it is more on the, like, we understand the context of a car. We generally understand mathematically what a car is, and so we can build a car a lot better and a lot faster.
And there's also a lot of IoT devices that can be used and sensors and things, right, on the assembly lines. And then there are also, there's the wearables too that's coming about with people. So like all that information and data for that, the robots, the IoT, all that data can come and improve that process.
And it's in everything. I mean, it's in everything. Funny thing, I'm a big fan of headlamps. I just buy headlamps. My wife is going to kill me one day. I have like 1,000 headlamps. I bought one day. I bought one. They're just great when you're working on something or you're out, writing at night. But I was working. I bought one recently from Home Depot or somewhere where it actually has like an AI. Like it says hey, turn on, give me a green light, give me a red light. So I don't have to even touch it anymore, right? So assume AI, but like I think it's being embedded on a lot of these electronics, and we will see an explosion of that in the next 6 months to several years.
There's a new meme. So we're talking a lot about memes today, and it's what's your serial killer trait? I think we just found yours. Yes. You just have one.
Okay, we've taken a whole nother turn on this. We're on
Very
serial killer. Okay, we're gonna have the murder mystery office hours.
Theater. That's right.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, we have just 5 minutes left. Anything you want to leave the audience with, Zed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Look, you're not too late to get into your AI journey. Your business can and will benefit from it if it's done correctly. Focus on the basics, but assume AI. Use that kind of rubric we mentioned earlier. If you need help, we're here. Sapiens here. We built this rubric. You actually can see it on our site, and actually, we'll see who joined us as a little treat, right? We're actually building. So we have it today. We have the AI assessment, readiness assessment, kind of like as a questionnaire that we have. We're actually transforming that into an app, and we're gonna load it up on our site. Part of that app is going to be free, but I think there might be some paid section. But we'll give early access to the people who joined us today on the call in the next week or so, and to do it. Use these tools, use these availability tools, and I think that really will tie in that gap between the crazy speed of AI and what you can do for your business immediately.
Nice.
I love it. Love it. I
Very
love a
good.
free tool. I love helping others with those type of things.
We have, for anyone who's in New York, March 26th, Zed will be our speaker for the New York version of AI Salon as well. So come
Looking
join us
forward to
in
that.
person to see,
Yes.
to Zed Max with me.
Yes. Wonderful. And okay, so Zed, this has been fantastic. I mean, I got to
Pleasure.
do last week with you, coffee, cappuccino and connections, and now office hours. So we're going to be wrapping up. This has been our February episode. And then in March, we are going to be having I believe it's March 24th, Melissa Medina, who's the CEO of Emerge Americas, and Burhan Sabin, who is the Chief AI Officer of Emerge and also heads up the Miami AI Hub. So what Melissa has done over the last 11 years is built Emerge Americas into a real powerhouse here in Miami, in Florida. The Emerge Americas conference is happening in April, over 20,000 people. And it features deep tech, fintech, healthcare, across the gamut. It's a fantastic bringing together of innovators, founders, investors, and corporate. So we're very excited to have Melissa and Burhan on to share what's going on in technology here in South Florida, as well as what they see and the trends that are coming as well. And also, there is also Melissa heads up Medina Ventures as well and what they're doing there on the venture side. So we can't wait to hear from her and Burhan. But we thank everybody for their time. And we also thank Zed for being with us and being part of the Sapien team. And we're so glad that he could join us today.
Pleasure being with you, ladies, and we'll talk in a few minutes.
You're the horse.
All right.
Let's go.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.